All right, today we are diving deep into a company called GoCollect. They're doing something that is seriously changing the game for anyone who collects, well, pretty much anything, from comic books to video games. Let's get into how they're pulling it off.
So let me just start by asking you this. What if you could track your entire collection with the same kind of detail and analysis that a trader on Wall Street uses for their stock portfolio? I mean, really track it. That's the huge question, and it's the core problem GoCollect set out to solve.
And to really understand how they do it, you've got to know who's steering the ship. This isn't some faceless tech startup. Nope, this platform was built by people who are obsessed collectors themselves. It's truly built by collectors for collectors. And this quote from their website, it just says it all, doesn't it? They literally call themselves the nerds behind the scenes. That tells you everything you need to know, right? These are people who are absolutely dedicated to getting the data right, but they still have that genuine love for the hobby itself.
And when I say hobby, I mean a whole universe of them. We're talking comics from every age, Pokemon, vintage video games, classic magazines like Nintendo Power, even concert posters. They're covering so much ground. This isn't just a tool for one specific niche. It's a whole ecosystem for collectors.
Okay, so let's get into the really cool part, their big innovation. They created something called the Collectible Price Index, or CPI for short. And the best way to think about it, it's basically the Dow Jones Industrial Average, but for comic books.
And this comparison just makes it so clear. The Dow, it tracks key companies. The CPI, it tracks key comic books. The Dow uses stock prices. The CPI uses average sale prices. And here's the most important part. Both of them take all those prices, add them up, and then divide them by this special number called a divisor.
So let's break that down, because it's actually way simpler than it sounds. It's really just 3 steps. First, they pick out a handful of key comics that are like a bellwether for the whole market. Second, they take the last 4 verified sales for each of those comics and average them out. And third, they add all those averages together and divide by that divisor. That gives you the index number.
Now that third step, that little thing called the divisor, that is the absolute secret sauce. It's the whole key to making sure the index is actually accurate and isn't just bouncing all over the place, giving you false signals.
Which, of course, brings up the question you're probably thinking right now. Why? Why do you even need a divisor? Why not just add up the prices and call it a day?
Well, it'll make perfect sense if we just walk through a quick example. Okay, let's imagine the total value of all the comics in our index adds up to $20,000. And let's say our divisor is 100. That gives us a nice, clean index value of 200. Simple enough, right?
But here's the thing. The market is always changing. To keep the index relevant, GoCollect has to swap books in and out sometimes. So what happens if they take out a comic that's been selling for around $1,000 and replace it with one that sells for about 100? Well, if they just keep that same divisor of 100, look what happens. The total sum of prices drops, and all of a sudden the index crashes down to 191. Now, that looks like the market just took a nosedive, but it didn't. Nothing about the market's health actually changed. It was just a little bit of bookkeeping. And that is exactly why the divisor is so crucial. Its whole job is to be a shock absorber, to smooth out those transitions. It prevents those fake-outs, those artificial jumps and drops, so the index only shows you what's really happening in the market.
So by adjusting the divisor down just a little bit to 95.5, the math works out perfectly again. 19,100 divided by 95.5, and boom, we are right back at 200. The index stays perfectly stable through the change. It's such a simple but really powerful piece of math.
Okay, so tracking public sales from big auction houses is one thing. But GoCollect realized that that's only half the story. A huge chunk of the market was happening in the shadows, completely invisible to everyone. So they built their next big thing, a way to capture that unseen market. I mean, just think about it. Where do the real deals go down? A lot of the time it's in Instagram DMs, during TikTok live streams, and private Facebook groups, on the floor at a Comic-Con, or just between 2 collectors making a private deal. None of that was ever being recorded anywhere. It was all just gone. Until now. This led them to what I think is a total game changer of a feature: crowd-reported sales. This is where the community, and that means you, the collector, can actually log all those sales that used to be invisible and put them right into the database.
Now, it is really important to understand how they handle this. The official verified sales from places like eBay and major auction houses, those still power the official CPI.
But all these new crowd-reported sales, they go into a totally separate public archive. Think of it this way. One shows you the top of the market, the other shows you the entire market.
And what's so cool is how they frame this. It's not just a data entry tool, it's a community-led movement. The core idea is that the collectors themselves now have the power to build a totally transparent market for the very first time.
So, what's in it for you? Well, you get to see sales you would have never, ever known about otherwise. You get to be a part of building this massive permanent record of what's really happening in the hobby. And you can even promote your own shop or your own brand because every entry can link back to you. You're not just looking at data anymore, you're helping create it.
And as GoCollect says themselves, and I think this just nails it, this isn't a gimmick, this is a movement. They're basically betting on us, the community, to have the passion and the integrity to build the most complete picture of the collectibles world that has ever existed.
Which really leaves us with one last huge question to chew on. For decades, this hobby has been built on private deals and hidden information. So, when a tool like this comes along and shines a massive spotlight on the entire market, making everything transparent, what do you think happens next?